Good morning, everyone. It is so great to see you all here today. So cloud-native adoption has been more like the rise of T20 cricket. It's fast, intense, and all about adapting to win. And in this dynamic game, India isn't just a player, but we are the team that's innovating constantly under pressure and pulling off strategies that leave the crowd in awe. But just like tough cricketing conditions, here we're talking about 16 billion UPI transactions in a month, or analytics that have to reach, say, 2 million farmers. So this is exactly where India's approach to cloud native comes in. It is not a response to all of these challenges, but more as a way to reimagine what's possible at scale. So here at the first KubeCon plus Cloud Native Con India, we're going to start taking all of these lessons learned from all of these unique conditions and try to see how we can strategize them in a global cloud-native context. So I have got an incredible lineup of panelists over here, and let's dive into this discussion. So to start off, Aparna, you have been leading platform engineering teams at Shopify. You have been, you're a part of the CNCF End User Technical Advisory Board. So how would you sum up the last decade of cloud-native growth for us? Like, what's the highlight reel you would like to show us, and what surprised you the most?
Yeah, so when I started using Kubernetes 10 years ago, it was a perfect solution for ephemeral dev environments, right? Like, if you want to iterate, you want to do a fun side project, that was a really cool tool. Fast forward 10 years to where we are today, most production systems are running on Kubernetes, and like how Flipkart mentioned just before in the previous talk, you need a service mesh solution, there's Istio. You need observability, there's a whole set of projects to do it. And Gen AI, you have really cool projects like Q. You need auto-scaling solutions, it's a whole bunch of auto-scaling solutions. So there's just like, building blocks for everything, and all you have to do as a platform team is assemble it together and, focus on the real business problem that you're trying to solve, right? So yeah, for me, it's come a long way. It's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, and that's the biggest highlight for me.
Kubernetes is everywhere, isn't it? Yeah, rise of platform engineering teams. So moving on and shifting gears, I'd like to come to Sudheesh. Sudheesh, you've had a fascinating journey. You've started open source teams over here in India, led Kubernetes-based enterprise products. So what's the secret sauce of Indian end users? Like, what makes them so different from the rest of the world? Like, are they more cautious, more innovative, or just unique, when it comes to, say, challenges like scaling or complex or compliance or security?
Yeah, it's been a fun ride, building teams, building products, serving customers. If I can talk about the Indian context, one of the things I see is like there's a huge support coming from government in terms of pushing open source, right? So this is more like just everything has to be sort of open source, and thanks to CNCF and hundreds of open source projects up there, and thanks to all the maintainers and contributors to these projects, right? So that's the first thing, right? Now, when you see from a sector perspective, something unique that I can think about is the whole BFSI sector. So, and again, thanks to the whole digital transformation pillar growing here in India, right? So this is the banking, financial services and insurance sector. I think they've been leading charge with Kubernetes adoption here in India, right? Predominantly, like, perhaps like sort of running core banking platforms, not just platforms, even also they're bringing in more innovation sort of in terms of things like, for example, the central bank digital currency. And this is sort of a global initiative, but sort of India is sort of leading charge there, right? And this is also mean to sort of minimize sort of misuse of things like, for example, how these subsidies and then government programs sort of reach the end user, right? One such example is like, for example, this whole notion of agriculture lending process to farmers, right? So that's sort of from a segment perspective. Now let's talk a little bit about scale, right? India is a country where like, everything is about scale, right? So it could be like India's like sort of national bank running like, say, like more like a 400 million users, running the core banking platform, or it could be like a dairy farm sort of monitoring the sort of health and milk production of 50,000 cows, right? Or it could be India's national stock exchange having like 19 billion orders a day, or it could be National Payment Corporation having like 16 billion UPI transaction a month, right? Or I can keep going.
Please
it could
go
be
on.
Indian Election Commission counting 642 million votes in a day, by the way, not in months, right? I can keep going. So everywhere you'll find, like Aparna mentioned, Kubernetes, right? And cloud native everywhere. So that's a scale, right? Now again, if you run mission critical application, compliance and security is super critical for these customers. So things like FIPS, STRIG, CAS, all of this certification, super critical. So if you're working on it, keep working on it, right? So that's from a compliance perspective. Now if I switch gears to more of like I have to talk about the startup ecosystem here in India. So we have, this morning I was talking to Achyuta about it. So we have like 30,000 plus tech startups right here in India. And they've been like really like a big consumer of Kubernetes and cloud native ecosystem. That way they can sort of build products and get to the market sooner basically, right? And finally, CNCF and the whole community being like a super helpful in terms of helping the end user to sort of get to the cloud native journey, right? And as you saw in Chris's slides, we have done like so many like events like KCDs across many cities, many sustainability events, and many Kubernetes and sustainability and other community events across the country. And now we are here celebrating the first ever KubeCon in India. So feels exciting.
Awesome. Like 19 billion orders in a day in the National Stock Exchange backed by Kubernetes. I think all of us should take a moment and be proud of that achievement, right? So Sudheesh, you talked about a bunch of points. Each of them can be like a talk in themselves, but I'll take compliance and go to Achyuta. Achyuta, you had insights at NASSCOM. So tell us how has cloud native helped the digital transformation of the country? Like how are businesses adopting this while staying compliant and competitive?
Yeah, and I think after Sudheesh, I don't have any more statistics to share. I mean, he's covered everything. I mean, is there anything else? I don't know. But let's structure this a little bit, right? When you say transformation, if you look at global technology spending, it's growing at about 4-5% every year. Digital tech spending is growing at 3x that number. In India, the tech spending is growing at 2x higher than the global tech spending. So if global is about 4-5, India is easily about 8 or 9. And I think cloud is a separate bucket altogether. If you go down, cloud is the bedrock of all digital tech spend, right? And in India today, if there are 2 jobs that are fulfilled, jobs that are posted, they're fulfilled, one goes unfulfilled. So about 30% demand supply gap is still there in anything that has to do with cloud. So cloud native also. So I think that demand supply gap is there, and it will go up in the future as we go forward. If you look at the people in India, or globally, we believe more than 2 million cloud native developers are there, out of which about 1/3 of them would be in India. The interesting part about it is that in India, about 80% of them have less than 10 years of work at some of the analysis that we have done. And another interesting part is almost 20% of the developers in India have changed jobs in the last 12 months. How many of you have changed? Quick show of hands. 20%? Yeah, it seems like that. So about 20% have changed jobs. So in a tepid market where jobs are not there on offer, there's still a lot of demand for cloud native. I think we all understand that India kind of missed the bus a little bit when it comes to cloud, a little late on the bus. So, but I think companies are getting into it. So if you look at 3 or 4 verticals, you look at banking, you look at automotive, you look at healthcare, you look at telecom. I think these 4 are some of the highest adopting verticals when it comes to cloud native and Kubernetes technologies. And within banking, you have great examples of microservice and cloud native apps by, say, Axis Bank, ICICI, HDFC in India. If you look at healthcare, you have good examples of IoT integration that Kubernetes has orchestrated at Apollo. If you look at telecom, Reliance, Bharti, they've all done great work when it comes to 5G deployments, IoT integrations there also. And in automotive connected car apps, you look at Mahindra and Mahindra, Ashok Leyland, Tata, I think they've all done good work over there. From a best practices perspective, I believe security, resource utilization, and availability. These are three big areas where I think as a Kubernetes and cloud native developer, there's a lot of focus to get successful deployments going. I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much for walking us through all of these gaps and challenges that we have to fill from a cloud native perspective. Thanks for that. Up in the discussion, we had a mention of community come along, and Bob, you've seen this at the, up close, the community, which runs in the fabric of cloud native, right? So walk us through, how does one go from a curious observer to an active contributor? Like, can you share your playbook on how to start open source communities, or say help contributors get onboarded, or like end users get onboarded on the CNCF stack? So do you want to walk us through that?
Each one of those could honestly be an entire talk amongst themselves, but I'll say the cloud native community is known to be sticky. We are happy to be a part of it, and we really enjoy bringing other people into it. I can't understate how welcoming the cloud native community is, and it's really become a core value of ours. And that's been done with a lot of intention. We've intentionally made that welcoming aspect a thing. And it's that welcoming aspect that creates additional pathways for people with different backgrounds and skill sets to get involved. Like in Kubernetes, we have essentially the comms team, and they handle things like our blogs, all our social media, and both our internal and external comms. And that skill set is very different from someone that's going to be developing on the API server, but they're still both pretty essential. And that's why we need people like PMs, tech writers, and people that have good marketing skills, because without them, you're going to have struggle with adoption. And those skills, being able to produce good documentation that are localized in a number of different languages, good marketing in terms of getting it out there, will help you grow adoption. When it comes to getting involved and sort of making that first leap, the big thing I need to just state is it's better to do it with intention. A lot of people want to just contribute to open source, but if you do it without doing it without intention and sort of knowing where best to apply your skills, or as an organization, what resources you have and where they can sort of could best be applied or bring to the table in a project, you're going to not be as a great impact unless you again, going back and do that with intention. If you do that and you get involved, you'll make a lot of good connections. You can you de-risk your own usage of the project by being involved and not even necessarily contributing to code. Again, getting adoption out there helps with growth and bringing in more contributors. So there's a lot of different paths for people to get involved, and for end users especially, they have a lot of these skills that the core products don't necessarily have. And again, they can de-risk their own usage just by getting involved and helping contribute. I know I tend to rant a little bit, but I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. I think there's a lot of rich perspective that has come out of this discussion. So I would urge the audience to continue all of these conversations, the hallway track, during the course of the conference with the panelists. But before we wrap up, I'd like to quickly go through each one of you and kind of pick your brain on how you see the upcoming decade shaped, with the adoption of cloud native. How is it going to change? Aparna, do you want to go first?
Yeah, real quick, we've been talking about the Linux moment for Kubernetes, right? So I think it's happening, and we should definitely expect that to happen. You can expect an operating system to be everywhere. You can similarly, you can expect Kubernetes to be everywhere, edge, point of presence, any major cloud provider. So yeah, you should just expect Kubernetes to be everywhere and focus on the higher order innovation.
Kubernetes being everywhere. All right, Sudheesh, do you want to go next?
No, I expect this we continue the momentum in terms of moving to more of a cloud and cloud native. I also see, and again, I see this journey being kind of accelerated by this notion of, like, for example, things like how you run virtual machines in a more of like a container or declarative style model, right? So that way, let's say if you have a database which is more like a stateful, and if you want to have both your sort of running your VMs and containers in the same application tool chain, that's sort of possible, right? With the technologies out there. And obviously, we cannot conclude this discussion without talking about AI, right? So I foresee the notion of sort of, especially as we establish India as the use case capital of the world, I foresee a lot of AI workloads emerging, and the notion of AI, MLOps, and frameworks and platforms like Ray and then Kubeflow sort of becoming mainstream, right? And above all, it's not just technology, right? And again, to continuing the notion of cricket, if you want to be staying on top of our game, we have to keep learning, right? We have to upskill, right? The notion of innovation to solve real-world problems. So I think this is all going to be exciting.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone can talk about the future right now without mentioning AI. So Achyuta, what do you have on top of your mind?
So I was just reading up, and I saw this number that Kubernetes market value, I don't know what that means, but market value is supposed to go to $9.7 billion by 2031 at a CAGR of 23%. I didn't understand that, but what I understand is that if you look at the cloud hyperscaler revenues, they continue to grow at double digits every year. It's still very high growth, right? And that will continue to drive the market forward. I think Aparna already covered the two tech trends that we are covering, right? Aparna covered one, which was edge, and as companies try to go for real-time data processing, in-device computing, right? That will become more and more important. So how does Kubernetes work there? And the second part is, of course, AI, right? And we all feel that Gen AI will lead to job losses. I feel something different. If Gen AI says that it will be able to do 30% more, make you more productive, that means you'll have to increase your workload. So you will actually be doing 30% more work. That means your development, application development workload is going to double in the next 3 to 4 years. And if that is going to happen, that means more containerization, right? 90% of whatever is being developed will be required for containerization, and that's where you guys come in. At the same time, if you see all these cloud data center companies, right? If you look at AWS, and Azure and Google Cloud, they've invested about $200 billion in new data center capacity, which is just to accommodate this additional, enterprise apps that will be there, which will be containerized. Is any of your clients budgeting headcount for this? None of them are budgeting headcount for this, right? So what I'm saying is that we are going into a world where agentic AI will be there. So basically, how do you work with AI agents along with developers? I think that will be the way forward, because nobody will budget headcount, but your workload will go up. So I think that's something that you have to prepare for. And by the way, today's news is that Elon Musk raised another $6 billion for his supercomputer that he's building, and he raised it at $46 billion valuation. 6 months back, it was valued at $18 billion. So all this investment is going in, so it's very real, and it's not very far away.
Stretching the limits of flexibility of Kubernetes is what I hear from you, Achyuta.
Of course.
Bob, do you want to go next?
Sure. So we keep hearing about Kubernetes being boring. It's 10 years old, job's done. I don't think it's there quite yet, but we're close. Today, you can find Kubernetes in all sorts of places you wouldn't expect. Cars, planes, appliances. Heck, I think there's even a coffee maker out there that runs it, and they push out updates through it. Like, it's crazy. Now, as it becomes more boring, it becomes easier to, operate and develop for. And with that, I think we're going to continue to see it pushed to support more different kinds of use cases and bring cloud native to environments it's never seen before. So with that, I'm really looking forward to seeing, how far it can be extended with the sort of like, how far Kubernetes will reach in the next 10 years.
And making it more boring.
Yes, making it more boring by being used in more use cases.
Awesome, awesome. So I think this has been an incredible discussion, so thank you all of y'all. For the audience, the ecosystem is huge of cloud native, so find your space and make your mark. With that, thank you. Have an amazing rest of the conference. Thank you so much.